And there is nothing here on this earth to support that life. The only support for that life comes from another world. So when Israel was walking across the wilderness, there was an atmosphere created by the Lord himself. There was a cloud that followed them, or led them rather. The cloud led them by day, and a pillar of fire by night, so that Israel never walked outside the atmosphere of God. Never. Every day the water was there. Every day the bread from heaven was there for them. So that God provided for them everything that they needed. But you know, sometimes we go for several days, maybe sometimes for several weeks, and we have not received from heaven. We have not really plugged into the atmosphere of God. We've missed him somewhere. The cloud's gone that way and you've gone that way. And we wonder what's happened. So today, God is just going to remind us about a few things. It says here, all our fathers passed under the cloud, and they all passed through the sea. They all passed through the sea. Well, there are three types of baptism here for Israel, because that's what it speaks of. It speaks of baptism. And here in the Red Sea, the children of Israel had just been delivered from the land of Egypt. 400 years of slavery, making bricks for Pharaoh, building Pharaoh's castles and whatever else he wanted to be built. They were slaves. And God sent a man called Moses to release them. When Jesus Christ came into this world, he came to release us from the bondage of slavery. Slavery to sin, slavery to our own self, which in fact doesn't exist, only in the mind of a man. Because what we are in the natural is not what God created. That's right. We are living as mortal human beings today. God never created a mortal human being. God created spirit. And that's what God knows. And that's what you are. And all of the journey that we are on today is to bring us into the realization and the reality of that spirit functioning as me. Yes. That's what it has to be. Now I can tell you Christ is in every man, and that's the truth. Christ is in every one of you today. Not a little bit of Christ, but Christ, the Spirit, is in you. And because of that, you are expected to live out of that life which God provided for you. But there's another life which seems to appeal to us, and that is our mortality. And that means that we are going to live as a mortal human being. We're born, we're going to die. That's the extent of our life. In our mortality, we suffer from sickness and pain and suffering, and from all these other things, from the deficit in our life of happiness. The problems that come are all heaped upon us, and our mortality becomes something that you groan under. But God said, I've given you life, and that life is eternal. That life cannot have a migraine headache. That life cannot get sick. It cannot have cancer. That life can't even die. But for many of us, we have ignored it. I did for 40 years in my life. But God got hold of me, and I began to become conscious of another life, and it's that life that I've sought to live from that time on. And today that life is becoming every day more real to me. more real. To get up, to expect, Father, you're going to walk with me today. Your presence will be the atmosphere in which I will walk and live. And in that atmosphere, nothing that can defile us can enter in the presence of God. In the presence of God, in that atmosphere, there is fullness of joy. Any of you sad today because you've got some experience in your life that has robbed you of your joy? I want to tell you, in the presence of God, in the divine atmosphere of the cloud, you can walk in freedom and release and be happy. It says they were all baptized under Moses in the cloud. Well, to be baptized under Moses didn't do a whole lot for them, because they weren't out of the Red Sea very long before they rebelled against the Lord, and the Lord said, here's your land, I want you to go in and possess it, I'm giving it to you, it's yours. And they come back, 10 of those spies came back and said, the land is everything that God said. He didn't lie to us, it's true. But you know, there's giants in there. We can't take that place, there's giants in there. But God never asked them to take the place. He said, I've given it to you. There is a life that God has given to you. It's not something you've got to work for. It's not something you've got to earn. It's not something you've got to study to find out how it all comes together. God has given you. That life is already in you, waiting for you to access it and begin to live out of it. That's the Christ of your true identity. So they went through the Red Sea. They went down into the sea after God separated the waters. So it wasn't a true baptism because the water never touched them. Right. But it was a symbol of baptism. And water baptism is purely a symbol. It's a symbol of a reality. But it's still only a symbol. So when we go through water baptism, unless you are actually in the Spirit, it will just make you wet. That's all. And that's what's happened to so many of us as we have tried to walk the Christian pathway and follow what we believe we had to do in order to receive the fullness of the Spirit of God. So they went through the Red Sea, but it didn't change them. They were just as rebellious as they were before. It says in verse 4, they all drank the same spiritual drink. They drank of that spiritual rock that followed them, and that rock was Christ. So they drank the water from heaven, because that's where it came from. They ate the manna, which was the bread from heaven. That's what God provided for them. And even though they drank that water and they ate that bread, they still had a rebellious nature. It did not change them. Many Christians have come to know Christ, but the change has never taken place in them. What is a Christian? I mean, we still ask the question. Why? Because so many people today that say they are Christians are doing stuff that, hey, you kind of wonder, what's going on? Like I say, you've got film stars today saying, I'm a Christian. Why? Well, they gave their heart to Jesus, God bless them. But see, that doesn't change anybody. That's a mental exercise. And therefore, it doesn't change anything within you.